Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and the mercy and blessings of God be with you all. Thank you all for joining us from across the globe for this live presentation of the tafsir, the commentary on the Quran. Tonight we're dealing with Surah Al-Baqarah, the second chapter of the Quran, towards the end, verses number 75 to 83. These verses deal with commercial law. So let me begin by praising our creator and fashioner. I say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salawatullahi wa salamu ala khatamin nabiyyin wa ala alihi tayyibin tahirin wa ala azwaji ummahatil mu'minin wa ashabi ajma'in wa ala tabi'in wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsan ila yawmiddin. So my brothers, sisters, and friends, so let me start my presentation. I will share my screen where I have my presentation going. And here we are. Okay. And then I'll start this as a slideshow from the beginning. Here we are. So commercial law, interest and debt. These are the two issues that are being dealt with here. More so the writing of a transaction in which one person owes the other, a debt transaction. So Surah 2, verses 275 to 283. Let us proceed. So you will recall now that what we will deal with tonight is the culmination of this long series of discussions on laws, new laws for a new community. That began with verse number 168 of this surah. And now we are continuing with all the way to verse number 283. So we'll end that discussion tonight. To proceed then. So 261 to 274 we dealt with last week, and that was under the caption of charitableness of the new community, the charitableness of the new community. And tonight, as I already indicated, we're dealing with commercial law for the new community. All right, so let's read this English translation as I've tried to put it together using the Pictal translation as a base, but also benefiting from the numerous translations which are found on IslamAwakened.net. Is it .com? I forget now. Islam Awakened. It's unmistakable. So let me read for you what I've the way I've styled this. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Those who consume usury will not rise up except in the manner of a person who tries to get up after the devil has knocked him down with his touch. And that is because they say trade is just like usury. However, Allah permits trading and forbids usury. As for those to whom a warning comes from their Lord and they restrain themselves, they may keep what they gained from past transactions. Allah is the best judge of their affairs. But those who return to usury are deserving of the fire. They will abide therein. Allah has blighted usury and made almsgiving fruitful. Allah does not love ungrateful, sinful folk. On the other hand, those who believe and do good works, who establish worship and give charity, shall have their reward with their Lord. They will have nothing to fear or grieve over. Believers, if you are truly believers, be mindful of Allah and give up usurious gains. Otherwise, be warned of war from Allah and His Messenger. However, if you repent, then you can retain the principal you invested. You shall not be unjust to others, and they shall not be unjust to you. If a debtor is in difficult circumstances, then let there be a postponement to the time of ease. If you want to know what is better for you, it is for you to charitably forgive the debt. Be mindful of the day in which you will be brought back to Allah. Then every soul will be paid in full for that which every soul will be paid in full that which it has earned. No soul will be treated unjustly. And now we come to the longest verse in the entire Quran. Believers, when you contract a debt for a stated term, record it in writing. Let someone who can write note down the agreement between you with equitable terms. Those who can write should not refuse to write. So I'm missing the word not there. It's a crucial word. Shall not refuse to write. They should write as Allah has taught them. Those who are taking the loan should dictate their pledge to repay. They should be mindful of Allah, their Lord, so that they do not pledge anything less than a full repayment. But if the debtors are of low understanding or weak, or for some reason unable to dictate, their guardians should dictate equitable terms. Call 2 of your men who are worthy of being witnesses. If not 2 men, then a man and 2 women whom you will be pleased to have as witnesses. This way, if one of the women forgets, the other will remind her. The witnesses shall not refuse when they are summoned. Do not be averse to writing the contract and its terms, whether for a small or great amount. That is more equitable in the sight of Allah and more secure for testimony. It is the best way to avoid doubt between you, except when you are transferring actual merchandise from hand to hand among yourselves. In that case, you commit no sin if you do not write it. Do have witnesses when you sell to each other. Let no harm be done to writers or witnesses. If you harm them, that would be a crime. Be mindful to Allah, knowing that Allah is teaching you and that He knows everything. If you are on a journey and cannot find someone to write, then the debtor may hand over an item as security. When one person thus entrusts an item to another, the trustee must return the item to its rightful owner in due course, while being mindful of Allah, his Lord. Do not conceal evidence. Those who conceal evidence have sinful hearts. Allah is aware of your actions. Now I come to the Arabic text as presented with translation and transliteration on the website alquran.info. Here I'll have a chance to look at the verses in a little bit more detail and to offer some comments as I go. الذين يأكلون الربا لا يقومون إلا كما يقوم الذي يتخبطه الشيطان من المس ذلك بأنهم قالوا إنما البيع مثل الربا وأحل الله البيع وحرم الربا فمن جاءه موعظة من ربه فانتهى فله ما سلف وأمره إلى الله ومن عاد فأولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. Those who exact usury will not stand, but like one deranged by the devil's touch. And that is because they say trade is just like usury, while Allah has allowed trade and forbidden usury. Whoever, on receiving advice from his Lord, relinquishes usury, shall keep the gains of what is past, and his matter shall rest with Allah. As for those who resume, they shall be the inmates of the fire, and they shall remain in it forever. Now, the term usury is used here, which is not a common term that we encounter nowadays. Nowadays, we speak of interest. So what's the difference between interest and usury? Usury sometimes carries the definition of not only interest, but a kind of exploitative interest. So nowadays, of course, as you know, we live in a free market society mainly, and anyone who has a better product is free to sell his better product. If anyone, and now mortgages are being sold as products. They're actually called products, interestingly enough, and if somebody has a better rate to offer, they would offer it. And so it's a free market where competition is what dictates the prices of things. So what's the cost of a mortgage? Well, the free market will decide that, because if one person wants to charge 10% on a loan, and another person realizes that, well, you can still make money by offering it at 9%, there comes that other person offering it at 9%. And if somebody can make money offering it at 3%, well, there comes that person as well offering it at 3%. So in this way, people will keep offering and counter offering until the final offer will be just at the borderline of where it becomes profitable. So below that, it wouldn't be profitable for anyone to do it. So when it comes to that borderline in a free market economy, then it is no longer the exploitative type of interest. People recognize in these economies that there is a cost to lending money. To put it more appropriately, there is an opportunity cost to lending money. So one could lend his money to somebody else, or one can invest that money in some profitable enterprise. So one has to weigh the options now. If I invest my money in a profitable enterprise, what can I expect to make? Well, maybe there's a possibility of loss. Maybe I lose the whole thing. Maybe there's a possibility of gain or whatever. So in weighing all of these options, one comes to, let's say, a simple option of investing in an enterprise that will pay a small dividend or a small, even an interest payment. So what might that interest payment be? So now for them to lend this money to someone else, that's the opportunity cost. If I lend it to somebody else, I'm losing, I'm foregoing the opportunity to earn through this other means, either by investing in a new enterprise or another enterprise, or by loaning my money to somebody else, or buying bonds or stocks or whatever the case is. So to compensate me for that opportunity cost, that's why I am putting a price on the loan. This is how the thinking goes in the modern market economy. I'm not saying that that's right. I'm trying to help us all to understand how it goes. So in this situation, then, it's not like somebody's spitefully decide to, lend money at a 20% interest, and then if you don't pay it back, then I take your house and I take your, I even take your children and sell them into slavery or something like this, which is what used to happen in the past. So the interest that is condemned in the Quran, what is the point behind it all? This is the question that we need to ask, because some people will say that the modern interest economy, this is not what the Quran had in mind. It is the old usurious type of transaction that the Quran is forbidding. So for this reason, it seems more prudent to return the word usury, as this translator has done, as I've done, and I see that many others have done as well. A few have rendered it interest, but I prefer to go with the majority of translators here and keep the word usury, because at least we're sure that the Quran means that. We cannot be sure that the Quran means the modern interest economy type of transaction. That doesn't mean that we're saying that the modern interest economy type of transaction is legit. It only means that we're sure that the usurious transaction is definitely forbidden, definitely haram. So what can we say about the modern interest transactions then? We can say that even the modern interest transactions do not befit the Muslim, because a Muslim has this money which has been bestowed on him or her by Allah, as we believe, even though we worked for it or gained education and then earned through a high-paying job as a result. So we consider it our own. But the believer says, well, this is from Allah. Allah has blessed me with all of this. Allah has given me life and health and strength and made it possible for me to earn all of this money. And whatever savings I have, I didn't need that. I ate what I could. I am wearing what suits me. And now I have this excess money. Should I then be so stingy that I cannot lend it to a person in need? So we can lend then to a person in need, and that will be charity on our behalf. It's charity without giving. It's only lending. You still have your money at the end, at least when it is repaid. And in the meantime, you are getting benefit from it, not by gaining interest on it, but by getting charitable credits to your name for the fact that somebody else is using and benefiting from your money. So naturally, we would want to lend it and get credit that way, rather than to receive interest. Now, depending on whom you lend it to, then there are different levels of conscience operating here. or it weighs heavily on your conscience to different degrees. So let's say you are lending it to an ordinary individual who just needs that money because he or she needs to get by on a day-to-day basis. Well, then it will be highly unconscionable for you to charge interest on from that individual. Let's say, on the other hand, you are lending it to someone to start a new business. Well, that new business will earn profits, and at least so it is expected. And there has to be some way, you might think, for you to share in the profits. Well, one way is to share in both the profits and the loss. Now, this is entirely permissible in Islam. You are buying a share in that business, and whether the business goes up or goes down, your share also goes down or up along with the business. So if the business is profitable, you profit as well. If the business suffers a loss, you are also suffering a loss. So that's even, Stephen, it's fair across the board. But in the modern interest economy, it is thought that you put your money in the bank is going to loan it to the new business owner on your behalf, basically, and get a profit from that business owner, but not just simply the profit. The bank is going to collect an interest regardless whether the new business owner suffers a loss or gains a benefit. And then that part of that interest is then paid back to you, the depositor. So in a way, you have loaned to the business entrepreneur, and you're getting an interest based on what you have loaned. Well, the difficulty for that still may remain in that if this new entrepreneur suffers a loss, then not only does he have to pay back the principal, which by this time probably he doesn't have, but he has to pay interest on top of the principal. And that could be quite devastating. So it's devastating, and that at the end of the day, that entrepreneur may be an individual just like you as well. He just had the idea he can start a business, or she, and here that person is, being penalized like this, and you are the reason that person is being penalized like this, because it's your money and you're demanding interest from the bank where your money is, and so on and on it goes. But of course, if everything goes well and the person makes a profit, then that's all good for everybody, those who are collecting the interest as well. We're talking from purely commercial transaction point of view. We're not talking now from within the Islamic context, how this might be viewed by Allah Azza wa Jal. But you can see the various ramifications of this. Now, because of the interest system, now somebody who wants a loan to start a new business will not be able to get a loan except through interest. And that may dissuade many a new entrepreneur from starting a business, because from the time you're thinking, okay, let me start this business, you're thinking, well, wait a minute, what if the business fails? If I take all this loan and I have to pay back, and I don't have that money to pay back, and because my business is not profitable, then not only will I not be able to pay myself, in which case it means that I'm going to be starving, but at the same time, I have to find money to pay back the lost principal, and I also have to find money to pay back the interest, where I'm going to get all that money. So one has to do a very careful calculation, and one has to say, okay, my expenses are going to be this much in starting this business, and my projected income is going to be this much. But on the expense side, I also have to put in the expected interest that I'm going to have to pay. And only if my expected income is going to be enough to cover all of these expenses, including the interest I'm going to have to pay on the loans I'm taking to start the business, then can I find it profitable to start the business. And you can see that for the reason of the interest alone, many a business will not start up. And so the economy is not progressing perhaps as rapidly as it might have progressed if people were willing to just simply freely lend their money without demanding interest. There are different sides to this interest equation here. So while Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is prohibiting us from taking interest, there are some items of wisdom which might be hidden from us, but on closer examination, we are coming to understand more of it. And these were known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from all eternity, and Allah is giving us that knowledge and that guidance so that we will not go astray. And we will not give in to greed. When a person says, this is my money and I need to gain on it, then there's an aspect of greed there. There's the avarice. There's this side of the person that says, it is mine. I want to keep it. I want to, and I want more. So this wanting more is contrary to the spirit of charity. Now, you will recall that last week we dealt with a whole section of Surah Al-Baqarah that deals with charity, several verses together, until we made the remark that this is one of the longest discourses on a specific topic in the Quran. And when it comes to legal issues, this is the longest because, usually the laws are mentioned in a brief way, and then we move on to something else. So after that long discussion about charity, what is this thing about interest? Well, the interest is the flip side of the charity. So somebody comes to you, they need help, you give them money and they go their way. That's charity. Now, on the other hand, if you start sitting them down to write a contract for them to repay you, then this is interest. And this is the opposite of charity. Instead of making it easy for the other person, you're making it difficult for the other person, especially if you're going to be charging them interest. If you're giving them a loan without interest, then you are making their life easier. Even if you're giving them a loan on interest, you might be helping them in some way because they might be grateful in the end that they got the loan, even with interest. But if they got it without interest, this is the supreme help. And or this is a better help than if you were to help them by giving them a loan giving them a loan with interest. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is continuing here to call us towards charity. And we will see even a direct call to that within these verses dealing with interest. But that's the whole rationale behind, it seems, positioning these verses about interest right after the verses dealing with charity. So let me continue then. Let me read it one more time to make sure that there is nothing here that requires further comment. Those who exact usury will not stand, but like one deranged by the devil's touch. That is because they say trade is just like usury, while Allah has allowed trade and forbidden usury. Whoever, on receiving advice from his Lord, relinquishes usury, shall keep the gains of what is past, and his matter shall rest with Allah. As for those who resume, they shall be the inmates of the fire, and they shall remain therein forever. They shall remain in it forever. Okay, so I think all of that is quite self-explanatory. So these people are saying, trade is just like usury. But Allah is saying, look, Allah has differentiated between them. So, don't say that they're the same. Allah has permitted trade and he has forbidden usury. So in trade, what is the difference? What is the main difference with trade? With trade, you're actually giving some usable product in the end, some consumable product or service. So you're giving the enjoyment. So there is a kind of enjoyment, whether it be in the terms of a product or service, and there is the money that buys that enjoyment. So with the usurious transaction, all you're doing is you're handing over the money, which can eventually buy the product or service. But in performing the service or giving the product and getting money for that in return, you're actually giving the source of the enjoyment to the other person. And so there's a lot of difference between trade and usury. With trade, the economy is stimulated. Let's say you manufacture something. Well, and somebody's going to benefit from using that thing that you manufacture. They're going to enjoy that. They give you their money. So you use that money to buy something that you are going to enjoy. So everyone is happy in the end. They got the product, you got their money. With giving over the money, the other person is not necessarily happy, especially when it comes time to him to repay. He's not going to be very happy when he has to repay with interest on top of that. And this is the main issue. So this is the key difference, apparently, between the trade and interest. Allah has permitted the one and forbidden the other. So now, when a law comes, you have to remember that at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, was such that the people were just coming out of the period of ignorance. They had many practices that they were already accustomed to, many things that they were in the midst of doing. And Allah, in his wisdom, did not give them the laws in such a way that, suddenly everything comes crashing down because there's a new law in place. No, Allah is giving them time and allowing for what has been done in the past, and declaring that to be forgiven. So if you've taken interest in the past, okay, you didn't know that there's something wrong with it, you took it because that was the norm at the time, all right. But now, from now on, you have to shape up and not return to that. So whatever has gone in the past, Allah is forgiving that. But from now on, you cannot return to it. And then whoever returns to it, they shall be the inmates of the fire. Okay, 276. يمحق الله الربا ويربي الصدقات والله لا يحب كل كفار أثيم. Allah brings usury to naught, but he makes charities flourish. Allah does not like any sinful ingrate. So Allah blights usury, and he blesses charity. So the two things are in contrast. The usury is blighted, the charity is blessed. So how might the charity be blessed? Let's say that somebody wants to start up a new enterprise, a new business, and you give them charitable funds and say, okay, there's a gift for you. Just take it and go and start your business, man, and be successful by the grace of Allah. I'm with you. So this person starts his business. His business is going to produce products. Somebody's going to buy that product, give him money in exchange for the product. He's going to use that money. He's going to buy some other product that he would enjoy or consume for himself and his family. And so the market is stimulated. So there's blessing in the charity. Whereas in usury, there is a blightedness because, first of all, it brings the spirits down. One from the very inception, having to take a loan on that basis is cursing the whole system and feeling very down. I want to start a business. I have this great idea. I want to benefit people. I want to produce this marvelous product. But the society is like this. Nobody is going to lend me a penny without them seeking some gain for themselves. And, so it brings the spirits down from the beginning. And of course, as I mentioned previously, it might actually prevent many business from starting up because one does not have the capital to start up and to take funds on loan as a startup seed money, as the startup seed money would involve all kinds of calculations about whether or not this new entrepreneur will be able to pay back that from profits that could be expected from this new enterprise. So the one is blessed, the other one is blighted. And that's at the physical and economic level, but also at the spiritual level. There is a sense in which one's money is blessed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, people who don't believe in Allah azza wa jal may not appreciate this, but those who are in close relation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they know if you have a little bit of money, somehow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses that. It remains with you for a long time. It's sufficient for all your needs, and you go on, you live, and you're fine. And somebody may even think that you're well-to-do. You're not well-to-do, but it just so happens that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you things like contentment, so that even though you have a little bit, you are happy with that, and nobody needs to know that you are in greater need. And whereas on the other hand, you might find that somebody is making all kinds of money, and at the same time, they are still in need and they're still complaining. So one person has been blessed, but blessed with a little, and the other person has been, well, in a way, he's been blessed with a lot as well, but he doesn't have that peace, that contentment, that security, that sakina that comes with the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the one is getting a lot of money through interest maybe, but at the same time, he's not very happy. And the other person is not earning interest, but he is giving a little bit of charity, and he's happy, even though he is given money from out of the little that he has. Still, he is very happy, happy to give, and happy with what remains in his or her possession. Okay, 277. إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وأقاموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة لهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Indeed, those who have faith, do righteous deeds, maintain the prayer, and give the zakat, they shall have their reward near their Lord, and they will have no fear, nor will they grieve. Now that is obviously clear enough, and I'll skip over that. 278. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وذروا ما بقي من الربا إن كنتم مؤمنين. O you who have faith, be wary of Allah and abandon all claims to what remains of usury, should you be faithful. In other words, if you're really believers, then give up what has gone before of usury. So don't go and say, okay, well, this person already agreed to this and he owes me this much of money and so on. What you took in the past, that is forgiven, but don't take any more. This is the Quran's message here. فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا فَأْذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ وَإِن تُبْتُمْ فَلَكُمْ رُؤُوسُ أَمْوَالِكُمْ لَا تَظْلِمُونَ وَلَا تُظْلَمُونَ. And if you do not, that means if you don't give up usury from now on, then be informed of a war from Allah and His Apostle. And if you repent, then you will have your principle, neither harming others nor suffering harm. So let me take that last part first before I forget. Neither harming others nor suffering harm. So the Quran wants there to be a fair and just society. The Quran is not calling on Muslims to allow themselves to be harmed by others. On the one hand, the Quran is telling you don't harm others. But on the other hand, the Quran is appreciating that you are an individual as well, and you should not be harmed either. No injustice should be done either by you or to you. So there is a veiled a reference here to the idea that Muslims should stand up for their rights. It's not a Muslim thing to say, okay, let them trod over us and I'm going to leave it be like that. No, a human being has to have dignity and needs to maintain some self-respect and insist upon that as well, to a certain reasonable degree. To a certain extent, you might forgive, forget, overlook, and so on. If people are taking your rights and you say, okay, let it be so, Allah will bring everything to justice on the Day of Judgment. But there comes to be a point where enough is enough, and you have to stand up for your rights. In a way, if you do not stand up for your rights, then you are leaving open a society in which the rights of people are being trodden upon. And it starts with your rights, and then it might go to somebody else's rights. So this is one reason why, as a consumer, sometimes you may want to complain. Maybe you by yourself could have lived with your defective product, and that's okay. But now you want to set the record straight. You want to bring the manufacturer and the advertiser to justice and let them know that they cannot get away with this. If they produce defective products, they will have to stand behind their products, not only for you, but all the other people who may unwittingly buy the same product. So you're standing up. While standing up for your right in the first place, you are at the same time standing up for the rights of others by extension. So now, if you do not give up in taking interest, what is Allah saying? Be informed of a war from Allah and His Apostle. And then if you repent, you can have your principle and so on. All right, so what is this thing about war from Allah and His Apostle? So how would Allah and His Apostle fight against the person who is taking interest? Well, Allah wouldn't be here on the ground fighting in an army, but His Apostle, His messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, would be fighting. And Allah is behind that army. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, would be fighting on behalf of Allah. But this is a war that would be waged by Allah and His messenger together. So that is the close relationship between Allah and His Apostle and the believers along with him. Now, why would there be a war? Well, the Prophet, peace be upon him, wanted to bring about a just society, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is directing him on how to shape that just society. That just society will entail that people are not charging usurious interest one to another. And so if there are people who are charging usurious interest, and as a result, they are even enslaving people, as used to happen in the past. People who owed money sometimes could not pay back, and they had to become slaves to their creditors. So in that case, the poor and defenseless people needed a defender, and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, would have been their defender by going to war against the classes, the upper classes, who are creating an unjust situation and perpetuating an unjust situation, so that the poor people will remain under their lordship. So that shows us something about why it's beneficial to retain the word usury here, because we're talking about a system of injustice that used to exist in the past and may still exist in some areas, and there might be some elements of that even in our modern societies, with loan sharks charging exorbitant amounts and so on. But most of the transactions that we're dealing with in the modern commercial economy is not of that nature. That's why it's beneficial to use that term. It also helps us to understand something about the maqsad, or the objective behind this law. So one might be asking, what's wrong with interest? Why does Allah, come so heavily down on this question of interest? Why declare war? Like, what else does Allah declare a war about? Well, we can understand it now when we understand that this is in defense of the poor and the oppressed in society. Whereas some modern commercial transactions, which are based on interest, do not have that flavor of oppressing people. I mean, at least not outwardly anyway. You may see that the bank towers are becoming higher and higher. Sometimes they're the tallest towers in the downtown location. Whereas, of course, the person who's taking the loan to buy a house may be having, a very meager dwelling. So who is getting richer? It is the ones who are loaning the money. So there's still a certain element of that, but it is not as it was pronounced in the past. And so now that we understand this maqsad, or this objective, that Allah is coming in defense of the oppressed people, the ones who have to take the loan, now we realize that what the Quran is condemning is taking the loan. That's why it started from the beginning to say, Alladhina ya'kuluna riba, the very first verse we looked at tonight, verse 275 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Those who eat interest, literally, that's what it says, those who eat interest. So we might say those who consume interest. And they're the ones who are being condemned here. It is the taking of the interest that is being condemned. All throughout all of this whole discussion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to the creditor and saying, don't take interest. If you've taken in the past, that's fine and done, but don't take any more. You can take back your principal, but no interest on top of that. So who is being addressed? It is the creditor. So against whom is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declaring war? It's the creditor who decides to continue taking interest. That is the problem, really. It's the taking of the interest. So now, when people ask me, if I have to take a loan in order to buy a house, does that make me fall under condemnation? I say no, because from the Quranic perspective, it is very clear that it's the one who is taking the interest that is under condemnation. It's not the one who is giving it. A hadith mentions that the one who takes it, the one who gives it, the one who witnesses, the one who writes the contract, all of these persons are under condemnation as well. But it should be understood that these other ones are only being asked to dissuade them. They're only being asked to stay away from the interest transactions, to have nothing to do with that. It's not because the interest transaction, by witnessing it, you also become accursed, or by writing the contract, you also become accursed. The one who is taking the interest, that's the one who is becoming accursed. And the one who is giving, he may have an excuse. The one who is giving the interest is because he has to, or she has to get the loan to satisfy a certain need. So they're driven by need and necessity to get the loan. So Allah is not going to curse them because they're driven by need to do something. We know in our religion, as a general rule, when people are driven by need, they are excused by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it can't be that they are being, Allah is declaring war against them because in the first place they had a need and they had to go to somebody else to get the money, and then they had to agree to pay interest on that money. No, the one who is the object of this declaration is the person who is actually taking the interest. And so we can see a possible way for people who need to buy a house, for example, because they live in a situation in which it is a need for everybody to have a house. And the only way they can do that is by getting a loan that is interest-based. It is because of reasoning such as this that the European Fatwa Council has ruled that if you're going to buy the house that you're going to live in, and it's your first house, it's not like you have 2, 3, 4, and this is the house that you're going to live in, and you need it, then you can, and there are no reasonable alternatives for you to get, let's say, a Sharia compliant loan or something like this, then you can go ahead and use the conventional bank mortgage in order to buy that house. Because this is a need, they say. It's not a necessity. By definition, a person can survive even in a rented unit all of one's life. But it's not a necessity. You can live without it, but it is a need, they say. So these are two different levels of categorizing things in terms of human need. One is the level of need, the other is necessity. So necessity is higher than need. It's a more dire situation. But even at the level of need, you need something. It's not a necessity, but still you need it. And having a house of your own, this comes under the need, under that category of need. And the scholars say that you can go ahead and do that. Of course, some will say, no, this is not allowed. But when we see the whole spirit of what the Quran is talking about here, we understand that it is the one who is taking the interest that is falling under the condemnation. Those who are giving it are just dissuaded from doing that so that this whole system does not continue. So nobody's lending to anybody on interest. So you yourself don't start getting into an interest loan. But if you really need it, it's a possibility. And this is what the Muslim scholars have begun to say. All right, so 280. We're getting to the end here, and then eventually I get to the questions of those who are in the Zoom room with me. وَإِنْ كَانَ ذُو عُسْرَةٍ فَنَظِرَةٌ إِلَى مَيْسَرَةٍ وَأَنْ تَصَدَّقُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. And if the debtor is in straits, then let there be a respite until the time of ease. And if you remit the debt as charity, it will be better for you, should you know. So you have loaned money to somebody, that person is in dire straits, they're not able to repay. Well, it is an act of charity for you to delay the payment date, so to give them more time. And if that is not feasible, but if it is even possible for you, even forgive the whole debt altogether, and this is an act of charity on your behalf. So you can forgive, and if you cannot forgive it, then at least you can give the debtor a longer period for repayment. And then 281. وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا تُرْجَعُونَ فِيهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ ثُمَّ تُوَفَّى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ مَا كَسَبَتْ وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. And beware of a day in which you will be brought back to Allah. Then every soul shall be recompensed fully for what it has earned, and they will not be wronged. So we have to beware of that day. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling on us to be charitable. Remember that day. Don't think of the money that you have now or the money you will want tomorrow in this life, but think of the blessings you will need on the day of judgment and give according to that. All right, and now we come to that longest verse, and I have to be fairly quick here because we have spent a good bit of time dealing with the verses regarding interest. Now we come to the verses regarding the writing of the loan transaction. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا تداينتم بدين إلى أجل مسمى فاكتبوه وليكتب بينكم كاتب بالعدل ولا يأبى كاتب أن يكتب كما علمه الله فليكتب وليملل الذي عليه الحق وليتق الله ربه ولا يبخس منه شيئا فإن كان الذي عليه الحق سفيها أو ضعيفا أو لا يستطيع أن يمل هو فليملل وليه بالعدل واستشهدوا شهيدين من رجالكم فإن لم يكونا رجلين فرجل وامرأتان ممن ترضون من الشهداء أن تضل إحداهما فتذكر إحداهما الأخرى ولا يأبى الشهداء إذا ما دعوا ولا تسأموا أن تكتبوه صغيرا أو كبيرا إلى أجله ذلكم أقسط عند الله وأقوم للشهادة وأدنى ألا ترتابوا إلا أن تكون تجارة حاضرة تديرونها بينكم فليس عليكم جناح ألا تكتبوها وأشهدوا إذا تبايعتم ولا يضار كاتب ولا شهيد وإن تفعلوا فإنه فسوق بكم واتقوا الله ويعلمكم الله والله بكل شيء عليم. So let me turn to the transliteration for those who are reading it from the transliteration, and let's try to read it from the transliteration as well. Or those who prefer, if you have your open text of the Quran before you, you can read it from the Arabic text while I try to read it from the transliteration here, and some others may be trying to follow from this as well. So it's verse 282 of Surah Al-Baqarah. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا تداينتم بدين إلى أجل مسمى فاكتبوه وليكتب بينكم كاتب بالعدل ولا يأبى كاتب أن يكتب كما علمه الله فليكتب وليملل الذي عليه الحق وليتق الله ربه ولا يبخس منه شيئا فإن كان الذي عليه الحق سفيها أو ضعيفا أو لا يستطيع أن يمل هو فليملل وليه بالعدل واستشهدوا شهيدين من رجالكم فإن لم يكونا رجلين فرجل وامرأتان ممن ترضون من الشهداء أن تضل إحداهما فتذكر إحداهما الأخرى ولا يأبى الشهداء إذا ما دعوا ولا تسأموا أن تكتبوه صغيرا أو كبيرا إلى أجله ذلكم أقسط عند الله وأقوم للشهادة وأدنى ألا ترتابوا إلا أن تكون تجارة حاضرة تديرونها بينكم فليس عليكم جناح ألا تكتبوها وأشهدوا إذا تبايعتم ولا يضار كاتب ولا شهيد وإن تفعلوا فإنه فسوق بكم واتقوا الله ويعلمكم الله والله بكل شيء عليم. Okay, so let's look at the English translation now. O you who have faith, when you contract a loan for a specified term, write it down. Let a writer write between you with honesty, and let not the writer refuse to write, as Allah has taught him. So let him write, and let the one who incurs the debt dictate. And let him be wary of Allah his Lord, and not diminish anything from it. But if the debtor be feeble-minded, or weak, or incapable of dictating himself, then let his guardian dictate with honesty, and take as witness 2 witnesses from your men. And if there are not 2 men, then a man and 2 women from those whom you approve as witnesses, so that if one of the 2 defaults, the other will remind her. The witnesses must not refuse when they are called, and do not consider it wearisome to write it down, whether it be a big or small sum, as being lent until its term. That is more just with Allah and more upright in respect to testimony, and the likeliest way to avoid doubt, unless it is an on-the-spot deal you transact between yourselves, in which case there is no sin upon you if you do not write it. Take witnesses when you make a deal, and let no harm be done to writer or witness. And if you did that, it would be sinful for you. Be wary of Allah, and Allah shall teach you, and Allah has knowledge of all things. So quite a lengthy verse. Let's deal with it a part at a time. So on the whole, it is calling on us to write down our transactions. So this is easy in the end for, proving a matter. Otherwise, disputes arise between good people with good intentions because there is some lack of clarity at the time. Let it be written down. And Allah is the one who has taught people to write according to this passage, even though the person may have gone to school, and one can say, my teacher has taught me, but from the Quranic perspective, it's Allah who has taught you through all of this means of others helping you to learn to read and write and so on. It's Allah who has taught you indirectly. People should write. And so you call a person to write, you call together witnesses. Let the person who has to make the repayment do the dictating, because when it's in his own words, then he's doing the dictating, then he's sure what he said. It's not like somebody else gave him the paper to sign, and then he's not really sure what's in there. It's like in our modern times, we are downloading a software and we are being asked, have you read all of the terms and conditions? Click here to say yes. And we just click to say yes. So who has the time to read through all of those terms and conditions? That's when the terms and conditions are put by somebody else. Maybe you don't have time to read it. Maybe you read it, but you didn't quite grasp what they were saying or something like this. But when you're going to say it yourself, then you're going to be sure that this is what I'm agreeing to. So when the debtor is going to dictate, the debtor will be quite sure this is what I agreed to, this is what I said I will do, and then hopefully that person, the debtor, will follow through with what he or she had agreed to. So the debtor will do the dictating. If the debtor is not able to dictate due to some weakness or some other reason, then the guardian of the debtor can do the dictating, and it has to be written down in honesty and fairness. Now we're going to call witnesses. So usually in traditional societies, the women did not have much to do with commercial transactions. They were in the background, they were helpful, and it is often said that behind every successful man is a helpful woman, or something to this effect. So the men were not successful on their own. They had helpers from the women folk in the background. The point here seems to be that because women were not in the forefront of commercial transactions, then the natural thing would be for you to call two men to be witnesses. But there might be situations where two men are not available, or for whatever reason, you can use one man and two women to be witnesses. So now, why two women in the place of the one man? Because it looks like the two women are replacing the one man. And some people had stretched this across to many different areas of life and said that, across the board, it looks like two women in the place of one man. But that's a mistake, because what we're dealing with here are the kinds of transactions that women would not normally have been privy to. And it would be an unusual situation to have them serve as witnesses in such a matter. And if they're two together, then they will support each other. They will know one would inform the other in case one knows some things about such transactions and the other doesn't know. So the likelihood of them together giving a joint and reliable testimony is increased. Now, when we look at what is known from modern psychology regarding men and women, although we cannot generalize, but we can see certain tendencies which have been studied. And it has been noted that men tend to want to act alone. Like for a man, that's me. I did this and I did it all alone. But for women, and again, we can't stereotype and generalize too much, but we can say that it has been noticed that many women are like this. They don't prefer to act alone. They prefer to act with a partner. They don't want to claim all of the credit for themselves. They would like to have somebody to claim that credit there with them. So when it comes to a matter like giving witness, they will feel more comfortable if they had somebody else with them to bear that witness along with them as well. So they feel a certain degree of comfort in companionship in this way. There is a further element to this in a court situation where you have cross-examiners who are going to ask you, are you sure you really saw this, or that was really what you witnessed? So people may feel intimidated by that, and some women in particular may feel intimidated. But if they have somebody with them who can support them, so if they start to waver under such cross-examination out of fright or discomfort, or just because they like to just simply please people, then the other one will remind her sister, no, wait a minute, you can't budge from that, because that's what we witnessed together and we both know it. So don't budge from that. So in this way, they will support each other so that the proper testimony is given in the end. So that's the whole point of it. It's not to establish a rule that there has to be two women in the place of one man. No, there may be some situations where the witness of a woman is more valuable than the witness of a man, especially as Muslim scholars have said in the past, when we come to areas of knowledge that women are more likely to be savvy about than men would be. And then in the Quran itself, in the 24th chapter, we have a situation where a woman may give testimony that will cancel the testimony of her husband. So that's the situation where a man is accusing his wife of indecent behavior. That will be brought to the qadi or to the judge, and the man has to bear testimony 5 times, in the end calling down the curse of God upon himself if indeed he is lying. The woman will be called to give testimony in her defense, and she will likewise give testimony 5 times that her husband is not telling the truth. And if and the 5th time she will call down the anger of Allah on her on herself, if indeed the husband is telling the truth. So when this is done, Muslim scholars understand that her testimony cancels the testimony of her husband, and no accusation remains on her. But at this point, because they've accused each other and calling Allah to witness in this mutual incrimination or recrimination, then their marriage will be separated at this point. But the valuable lesson we come out with from this is that, for our present purpose here now, is that the woman's testimony actually cancels the testimony of the man in that case. So we cannot say that as a general rule you must have 2 women in the place of 1 man, whether it comes to witnessing or even to any other matter. So if it is a transaction in which you are just simply exchanging the product right on hand in hand, then from hand to hand, then there's nothing really to be recorded, because as they say, possession is 9/10 of the law. You have the one product, the other person has what you give him, and you depart your ways. So, you're fine that way, even without recording. But if you're doing a sort of transaction that may come into dispute later on, then it is better to write it down. And that is better when it comes to proving the matter in the future. No witness should come to harm. No writer should come to harm. Sometimes in some corrupt societies, and you can see, among gangs and so on, people come to harm just because they have witnessed something. Well, the Quran is laying a basic rule here that we are not to harm the writer. We're not to harm the person giving testimony. And the final verse I want to study tonight is this one. How come we have this? Yes, okay. So verse 283. وَإِن كُنْتُمْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ وَلَمْ تَجِدُوا كَاتِبًا فَرِهَانٌ مقبوضة فإن أمن بعضكم بعضا فليؤدي الذي اؤتمن أمانته وليتق الله ربه ولا تكتموا الشهادة ومن يكتبها فإنه آثم قلبه والله بما تعملون عليم. If you are on a journey and you cannot find a writer, then a retained pledge shall suffice. And if one of you entrusts to another, let him who is entrusted deliver his trust, and let him be wary of Allah his Lord. And do not conceal testimony. Anyone who conceals it, his heart will indeed be sinful, and Allah knows best what you do. So here we are in a situation, or the Quran is describing a situation where you might be on a journey, and in that situation, you won't find a writer. So nowadays, of course, we can easily find somebody to write. But think about the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Think about 2 persons on a journey somewhere. They're in the middle between towns. They cannot find a writer. They're agreeing to a transaction right there on the spot. What are they going to do? Well, the debtor can hand over an item as a security to the creditor. When the debt is repaid, the item will be handed back. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, then when somebody entrusts something to you in this way, then you have to return the trust in its rightful owner in due course, and do not conceal any testimony or any evidence. If anyone conceals it, then his heart will indeed be sinful, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best what you do. So that brings us then to the end of our study of all of the laws which are here in Surah Al-Baqarah. So what remains in this surah? Just the summary of core beliefs and the concluding dua, all of which will be only within a few verses, verses 284 to 86. And that means that next week our discussion can be shorter, but next week, inshallah, we will perhaps say something about the matter of coming to the close in our Quranic study, and how Muslims would feel overjoyed at the time of coming to such an important juncture as the study of the entire Surah Al-Baqarah. I mean, that would be a time for passing out sweets. Had we be meeting in the masjid, we would be passing out sweets and we'd have a joyous time there. But now under COVID-19, we're all basically to our homes, especially in the Toronto area. And we cannot do that. But, maybe we'll have a lighter moment next week, and maybe not necessarily sweets, because sweets aren't always good for us. But, any healthy edible would do. We could all eat what we like where we are, and together we can feel like a community together, eating and sharing at the end of this study of Surah Al-Baqarah. So for those of you who have joined me online, let me just summarize, and then we can bring the online streaming to a close. So verses 168 to 283, these contain new laws for the new community of Muslims formulated under the guidance of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, some 1400 years ago. And even at that time, we have commercial law for the new community that we have just studied tonight. And next week, inshallah, we will deal with the last 3 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, which contain a summary of the main beliefs of Muslims, and also a concluding dua, which is in that chapter. So at this point, let me thank you all for joining me and joining us from around the world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all, protect all of you and your loved ones. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless your countries and bring peace and harmony all around the world. I know that in Ethiopia right now, things are a little bit chaotic. I pray for the people of Ethiopia. I pray for people everywhere. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect them all from COVID-19, from every other disease and stress and distress, from every other force and every other power that threatens harm to their persons, their properties, their homes, their families, and their own lives. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect them all, protect us all. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring harmony to the entire world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring peace to the entire world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cause this world to be safe and secure. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect the environment so that we can hand this world down to our future generations, a world that we can be proud to hand over to them, and that they will be happy and pleased to inherit from us. Brothers and sisters and friends from around the world, thank you all for joining me for this live discussion. Inshallah, on Sunday evening, 7 o'clock Toronto time, I will be in a debate with Michael Lofton on the topic, does the New Testament teach that Jesus is God? So join us for that Sunday. I'll put the link on my Facebook page for you to join us for that debate, inshallah. So until then, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you all. Fi amanillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.